I'm Michael Bain, and welcome to Triggered, coming to you from a secret hidden bunker in the Rocky Mountains. And I don't have to tell you that the internet is weird, but last week it was even stranger than usual. Lots of people sent me emails, called me to say, "Hey Michael, one of your old shooting gallery videos just went viral on, of all things, TikTok. 100,000 views, 7,200 likes. What was it about?" This gun. It is a Bishop 458 SOCOM bolt-action rifle built on a RIM 700 action. It's a fascinating gun, so we thought we'd go back in our archives and pull out everything you might want to know. Hey, you don't even have to have TikTok. I'm Michael Bain, and welcome once again to our weekly downrange video. And hey, I know this is a gun a lot of you have been really interested in, so I actually raced it from my FFL holder back up here to Dragon House Studios to give it its first premiere on camera. This is a Bishop 458 SOCOM, their hunter version. And you recall I saw this gun at SHOT, and it was designed and built by Merissa and Dianne Bishop out there in California, and it was their vision of a brush gun, a vision of a hog hunting, a deer hunting gun, a dangerous game rifle that was easy to handle, that handled smoothly, swung really easily, and still used a compelling cartridge. And indeed, the 458 SOCOM is a compelling cartridge. So admit it, this thing looks great, doesn't it? It is built on a Remington 700 short bolt action, one of the great standards of the world. Timney trigger, Timney 510 trigger in this guy. This, of course, is a Magpul Hunter stock. This particular glass, they sent me to T&E. This is a Bishop scope. It is a 1:8, and basically Merissa Bishop shoots 3 gun, and she designed this scope and had it made overseas to meet her 3 gun needs. So it's illuminated 1:8 scope. Of course, 8's probably a little overkill on a 458 cartridge, but you notice the muzzle brake, and the reason you see that big muzzle brake there is because we're throwing a big bullet relatively fast, so it is going to recoil on you. Now, this is one thing that I thought was pretty neat about this. Let me just, the gun works off a standard AI magazine. Accuracy International is the standard magazine for all Earth. This is an Accuracy International 223 magazine that has been modified with spacers, because always the issue with the 458 is it is a short, stubby cartridge. And so on the 223 magazines, you'll notice there's some issues here. And if you recall, when I built the Bill Wilson Problem Child, my 458 SOCOM on an AR-15 platform, I didn't have much trouble with the gun, but I had a heck of a lot of trouble with the magazines. So much so that really typically Bill Wilson sells 458 specific Lancer magazines. Well, Merissa and Dianne Bishop approached this as well, because the general consensus was that with an AI magazine, you're not going to get this weird little bottleneck cartridge to feed in it. And Merissa said it took her a long time, but the final product feeds really smoothly. So, like I said, spacer here, spacer there. This week's Triggered is brought to you by Arms Corps, Rock Island Armory. What's your passion? Taurus, USA. Always ready, always bring it. Stoger, everyday tough. SDS Imports, Thesis. Thesis means quality. Hunters HD Gold. They change so you don't have to. And MTM Case Guard. Quality shooting sports accessories. For me, one of the things that when you talk about a brush gun, there's a couple of things that you want it to do. Is you want it to be able to shoulder quickly, and at the same time, you want it to point quickly. You know, we've been talking about that as I've worked through with 4570 lever guns, that I want them to be able to point. Because when you're talking about brush hunting, and again, I grew up in Tennessee, and where deer hunting is a religion, my entire family, the great extended family of maybe 3,000 people, I don't know, it's a lot of them. But, you know, deer season opened up and they all headed out, usually with Winchester 30-30s. And the reason is because they're fairly dense brush, which I've gotten spoiled here in Colorado. There isn't very much dense brush out here. It's pretty much open ground, but you get in the south and it can get dense. So what happens is you're going to see an offhand shot inside 100 yards. In all his years of deer hunting, I do not think my father ever took a shot longer than 90 yards. So you're going to want a gun that's easy to shoulder, and you're going to want a gun that's easy to swing. You know, this is a 16-inch barrel. I like 16-inch barrels because realistically, this cartridge was designed for an AR platform in a 16-inch barrel. It was kind of designed from the ground up for it. So a 16-inch barrel makes it easy to swing, makes it really easy to point. I like the scope. It's essentially what they called a CQB reticle. That's an illuminated sort of most of a circle and a dot, and then the crosshairs. It's a pretty good reticle. You know, it's a reticle that when you've got it on, when you've got it illuminated and you come up, it's very quick to pick up. And that's going to be important in a brush gun because a lot of times you're going to see moving game. If you recall Africa last year, shots on moving warthogs, you had to treat them like clay pigeons because they were running really, really fast. And with the optic, with the dot, it was a track. So you can get a little bit of a lead on a running animal. One of the things I like about the 458 SOCOM is it is really, as I said, a compelling cartridge. It's got an interesting history to me. That whole cartridge, this whole 458 SOCOM, is an interesting and strange experiment that has been going on since I think 2000. This cartridge was designed by Marty Terweems and the guys at Tromix. I happened to run into them at the SHOT Show in 2001, and they're like, wow, you got to see this. The legend is this cartridge was designed for a special forces team. It was designed, purpose designed, because the 223s were not essentially knocking people down. And a 458 is a little bit more of a cartridge going on there. So that's the legend. Is it true? I don't know. Stories that I've heard, but I've never been able to verify that some of the big bore cartridges, a lot of them came out at the same time, of course. You know, we got the 50 AE and the Desert Eagle, you got the 50 Beowulf, you got the 450 Bushmaster, all occupying that kind of heavyweight niche in there. But so this cartridge came out. I got my first 458 upper in 2001. Now, unfortunately, I got my first 458 ammunition in 2013. I had long since sent that top back because literally you could not find the ammo. I couldn't even find components to reload the ammo. And if you go back to the ammo shortage of a few years back, man, these were gone. You know, at that point, I was working with the Wilson 458 SOCOM AR, and whenever there were like 20 cartridges for sale on one of the auction sites or 20 casings for sale, I bought them. You can always find a zillion 458 bullets. That was always the advantage of the 458 SOCOM over something like a 450 Bushmaster, because 458, obviously, there's a zillion bullets out there from, you know, 458 Magnum, 4570. There are a lot of bullet choices. By the way, this is a Barnes TSX, something like TTSX, hunting bullet. And once these came back into circulation, I sort of jumped on them. I now have enough cases so that if we have another ammo shortage, I'm pretty much okay with that. But once again, you can see the parent case here was a 50 AE. And you can actually see that rim, you see how it's rebated back so it will fit basically a 223 bolt head. That's why that was done. And I like the cartridge. What you've got ballistically, let's be honest, this is a 4570. If you lay the ballistics side by side, typically one of the things I like to do is take a bullet weight, say 300, which is, you know, consistent across 4570, across 458 SOCOM, and you lay those ballistic charts side by side, and you might have to give a tiny edge to the 4570. But on the other hand, this runs actually in an AR platform, and you can get a 4570 in a bolt platform, certainly, of course you can. However, the 4570 is a rimmed cartridge, And that's always going to be an issue feeding from a magazine. Now, if you go back into the 60s, there was a flood of surplus, I think, Siamese Mausers that used a rimmed 8mm cartridge. And a lot of people, including my father, who built a lot of really profoundly bad guns, my father converted them to 45-70 because the magazines were set up to run a rimmed cartridge. But I think 2 or 3 was all you ever got the thing to run. So you can get a 45-70 bolt gun? Yeah. 45-70 was born to be an 11 gun. That's what God intended, and that's what I've been shooting them in. So we got a cartridge here that's ballistically the same. It's a 300 grain bullet. You're looking at 1,700, 1,800 feet per second. Now, one thing that's good now is these cartridges, the 45-70 and the 458 SOCOM, have been in effect magnumized. You can go to some place like, for instance, Buffalo Bore. Tim Sundress at Buffalo Bore is a friend of mine. They build great, very powerful cartridges. And so you can go to, say, their 45-70 Magnum cartridges. That's what I've been working with low these past couple of months. But the same thing, they make 458 SOCOM hunting and sniping ammunition. And they make them all the way up to a 500 grain bullet. So a 500 grain bullet going even relatively slow, 12, 1,300, 1,400 feet per second, is a very, very powerful projectile. So on the whole, I like this. And one thing I thought was interesting is that Bill Wilson did basically not abandon the platform, but moved on with this 458 Hammer, which basically allows him to use a 308 AR-10 bolt. He's using an AR-10 bolt, so it's beefier, and he's using one of what we've talked about before, is a kind of a mid-range platform on an AR, between an AR-15 and AR-10, popularized by CMMG, which they called a mutant type receiver. But what it does is it allows him to take the pressure up a notch. You know, here you're always going to be limited basically by a cartridge that's designed for the AR-15 action, and that means your pressure stats are going to be acceptable to that platform rifle. You're not going to magnumize this cartridge enough so that it will take an AR-15 platform and turn it into many little pieces of splintered aluminum. So I believe that's why Mr. Wilson went up. But on the whole, I'm looking forward. We're going to go down to the range in just a minute. We're going to pull the trigger on this a little bit. And once again, these are out of the box, literally out of the box, literally stuck this scope on here. But I'm pretty excited about it. You know, all in all, it's something different. One of the things that Merissa Bishop said is that just when you think you've seen everything in hunting rifles, or everything in kind of those little short compact rifles, somebody shows up with something new. And that's exactly what this gun is. Of course, we've got a bull barrel hill, so you got some weight. I don't know, call it 10. No, not 10. Maybe 8, 9 pounds. A little bit of beef on it, but with this Magpul stock, I'm a real fan of the Magpul Hunter stock. I think it's extremely well designed. I like the way here that the pistol grip fits. I mean, to me, the pistol grip fits excellently. It's a very comfortable stock to me. And of course it comes with spacers. If you're a great big guy, if you're Mark Keefe, I mean, you can always put in spacers and get yourself a little bit longer stock. But for me, so far, this feels really exactly like what I'm used to shooting. So, and that's exactly what I want to feel. We've got this comb. It's set up exactly right for a scoped optic. Comes up to my cheek. The optic is right there. As I said, it is basically a very good, very fast reticle in this gun. So I'm pretty excited about it. I have a lot of plans for it. I know a lot of you who've written me about this gun have said, would you mind loaning it to us so we can take it to Texas and whack hogs with it? Because it looks like a hog whacking machine, and it may well be. As you can see, you know, when you've got a threaded muzzle, and this one's got a muzzle brake on it, you can take that muzzle brake off and screw on a suppressor. And Buffalo Bore makes subsonic 458 ammunition. So it's going to be relatively quiet. Everything's going to work really, really pretty well. I don't actually have a 45 suppressor. I have them hanging out in limbo, you know, as Jimmy Cliff said, sitting there in limbo, waiting for the dice to roll. So There's always something new under the sun in gun world, and I've really enjoyed my conversations with Merissa and Dianne. Merissa especially tends to be on the internet kind of in the middle of the night, right about the same time I am. So we exchange ballistic information, we exchange various and sundry ideas on guns. I'm under NDA on some of her projects, but they are really, really fascinating. She's doing something really different. She's kind of, to me, the classic gun tinkerer, sitting there saying, wow, I wonder if I can do X. And then she sits down at the drawing board. Diane's a metallurgist, a former military metallurgist by trade. She's like, well, maybe I can translate this into steel. So that's one of the things to me that makes this business so very fascinating. So once again, the Bishop Hunter, and I swear I'm going to put this to use. I'm Michael Bain, next week.